Hello everybody, welcome to the presentation of the Multichannel Maturometer 2019, already the 11th edition of that. We had 198 respondents, and those of you who responded to the webinar and are attending, thank you very much, and hope you will be joining us in the future as well. My name is Fonny Schenck, I'm the CEO of Across Health, and I would like to pay a lot of tribute and thanks to Sander, who has been helping me a lot with preparing the slides and the analysis. So I will now take you through some of the key findings. So 198 respondents, which is makes it the single biggest survey on the maturity of the industry still. And we have about 50% national respondents, so people from a local affiliate, and about 50% from headquarters, be that regional or global. So a good spread of local versus international respondents. If we look at the type of function people have, also there quite a good spread. We have about 50% manager role and about 50% director or higher, because we believe that there's different perceptions and actual activities that those people have regarding digital, so as you will see later on. So a good spread of different levels. If we then look at the role they have, also there we have a good spread of people really heavily involved in digital multi-channel, that's about 30%, and then marketing and the other functions. I think for the first time we start seeing more respondents also from sales, and CRM and market research in the space, showing, I think, the broader extension of digital across functions. So a good spread of digital versus other functions, in essence. The interesting finding, which surprised us as well as many other people that we showed the data to, is that the percentage of marketing spend that goes to digital has declined in 2019. So from 22.1, which was the third year of growth in 2018, we see a decline to 19.1, which brings us basically back to the levels of 2017. So the question is this an anomaly? Is this a fluke? Is this a trend? If it were a trend, then that's not a good sign, because typically pharma companies or other industries basically spend 20% of their sales and marketing budget on digital. If you look at pharma, this is only 20% of the marketing budget, and it's probably closer to 5% of the sales and marketing budget. So if you compare 20% in other industries to the 5% of sales and marketing spent to digital in pharma, that's of course still a big difference. So the question is this a fluke, or are there good reasons for this? We looked at a few options, a few hypotheses, and these are the three main ones. So the first one is, well, maybe these people have learned how to spend the money wisely, more bang for the buck. That could be an option, that they've been able to lower the relative spend but increase the impact in the market. Second one, hesitation to invest more. So people started investing, but they don't see the return. Senior management start asking for, show me the money. And nobody can show it, so senior management also becomes reluctant to invest. And the third one could also be happening in the sense that more people that participated in the survey now are actually relatively new to the space and start investing conservatively. So those are the three main hypotheses, and we'll now go a little bit into detail for those three. So the first one, smarter use of digital dollars, more bang for the buck. Is that actually, let's say, corroborated by some of the findings? We think not. So we don't think that's, we're in that, let's say, very golden situation yet. And we just look at a few, let's say, statistics here. So one of the questions we had, like, imagine an ideal organization using digital technology and capabilities. Where do you think you stand in that respect? You see that only 1% thinks that it's very close to that, and 12% thinks it's close. So that means less than 50% think they're close to where they should be in terms of the ultimate hallucination of digital. So there's clearly, I think, not the maturity level that you would associate with spending the money in the right way. Second fact, if you look at the satisfaction levels are not going up. They are still at the same level as back in 2010, with, let's say, somewhat of a rise in 2018, but then back a decline. So if, let's say, you were to spend your money better and you would see more impact, you would actually expect also to see a much stronger satisfaction level, and that is clearly not the case. The good thing about this one, though, is that the people who are really dissatisfied is going down, and that's actually quite consistent. So you see a middle group of people, that's the yellow line, that actually is consistently going up. So there's more neutrals in the space, and I think that is going to be an interesting situation when they start to become positive. So when does it actually happen, and what would be the result of that? I think that will probably be the start of the big change in the industry. So quite interesting numbers. Last but not least, although there's a decline overall from 22 to 19, if you look under the hood, you see that there's actually two types of respondents and two types of spend levels. There's a group that spends less than 15%, and there's a big group that spends between 5 and 10%, 37%, 1 out of 3. And then you have another group which spends much more, 43% spend much more, and that much more can grow, let's say, above 25% or 30%. So there's two types of respondents here. Some of them have taken the leap and are doing quite well, and some of them are just getting started, I believe. So it's a digital dichotomy, I would call it, which may have to do with this fact. So the second hypothesis was more participants are just getting started. You could, let's say, think that if you're getting started, you're not going to spend half of your marketing budget on digital. So my hypothesis that this could be a good one is, I think, held up by this. So a lot of people just start to spend. They are still neutral, as we've seen, so that the neutrals is going up. The dissatisfaction is getting down. So this group will be moving, I trust, to the right going forward. But they should also realize that there's quite a big group that is already well ahead of them. So the group to the left, right, sorry, is quite ahead of them. So second hypothesis, I think, yes, kind of. Then the third one, maybe this hesitation to invest more may have to do with lack of direction, lack of strategy, where to go, as we call it in the title, lack of ROI, and lack of skills. Let's look into that a little bit deeper as well. So in terms of, let's say, enablers, in terms of digital skills, etc., there are some good news to be told here. I call it the hard enablers, which to me comprise technology and physical staff, so resources to actually make things happen. Those are the hard enablers. A lot of things there are really in place. For instance, if you look at, let's say, the tooling available for the multi-channel rep, you see that 82% is using tablet detailing. Approved email has also, let's say, significantly advanced. The two other ones remain in the doghouse of virtual detailing and e-rep. The technology is there, but the adoption is low. But let's say overall, you can't say that the technology is not there. Everybody's using IQVIA or Viva to actually enable those kind of toolings and activities. If you look at the marketing side, you see a similar picture. So product websites, disease websites, newsletters, etc., are widely adopted. So the technology exists. People do those kind of things. So that's the enabler is clearly there. If you look at the other hard enabler, as I call it, namely staff that actually can help your projects get executed, there you see a similar picture. This is international digital teams. About 40% is over 10 staff to actually execute those things. and only 1% has one person. There is still about 13% of headquarters that has no people actually working on those things, but the other 87% do have staff actually working in the space. So that condition, that enabler is clearly there as well. The numbers, by the way, are quite similar to last year, both in terms of percentage that have those teams and also the distribution of the number of people. Same thing at the local level, the hard enabler of people that can help you execute your ideas, it's there. So the teams are, of course, smaller, tend to be smaller, but you still have, let's say, 14% that has above 7 staff locally. That is quite substantial. So that enabler is not an issue. And so it's not that you don't have people to actually execute your project. They are there. And also here, the number is quite similar to what we saw in last year's trend. If you look, however, and that's more the strategic component of it rather than the hard fact of having people available, if you look at the satisfaction level, that is quite, I would say, underwhelming. This is the international teams. So 70%, as I mentioned, do not have an international team, but the 83% that do, the scores there about satisfaction or effectiveness level here is quite low. So only 19% feels it's quite effective, and that number is quite similar to last year, so not going up. If you look at the local staff, the number of companies that actually have staff locally is smaller than the international one. The satisfaction levels or effectiveness level are a little bit higher, but as you can see, the 37% highly effective and 37% saying low impact still show that it's not, let's say, a big win there. So what they do and how they work is, let's say, less appreciated than the fact that the quantitative component of having people is there. I think this is also beautifully illustrated by another question we have, a question we got from one of our clients who said, well, we have a lot of work ongoing at regional level, we spend a lot of money, but we see limited adoption in local affiliates. Is this only in our company or is it, let's say, widespread? Well, we can comfort that person kind of with the fact that it's not only that company that has the situation, it's kind of general. So only 20% of local, and these are only the local respondents here, so now you see 98 people rather than 198, so only 20% of those use more than half of the content that they get from global or regional. That's a significant waste, I would say, and much more should be done in actually making sure that what is delivered by international is aligned with what local wants going forward. Okay, I talked about the hard enablers, being technology, being resources in place. They were quite okay. If we look at the hard enablers, namely those enablers that make the heart move and that make the mind tick, that's a different situation. So the soft ones are quite different from the hard ones, as you will see. So if you look at the hurdles, interestingly, after 11 years, we still see, well, the fact that local, let's say, regulatory, legal, healthcare compliance issues is number one should not be a surprise. The interesting thing is that it drops over time. So it used to be much higher. So people learn how to handle those issues. But the fact that that's number one, I think, is not an issue. The fact that after 11 years, no clear digital strategy is a very prominent number two should be a surprise, or well, clearly indicates that there is a lack of it. And the fact that typically the manager has more of an issue with that than the director may not be totally, let's say, surprising, because managers or directors feel that they have a strategy, but managers feel that it has not been communicated or does not exist. So that's not a big surprise. And then the third one, not enough internal knowledge, has also been ranking number 2, number 3 in the last couple of years. And here too, you see a big divide, which is quite interesting, where the director actually rated their top concern. So we always say they do not know what good looks like. So if they're going to appoint people to do strategy, to do projects, and they do not know what actually good looks like, then what do you get? It seems that the manager level has less of an issue, so they have probably they're more digital natives and are much more accustomed to it. So it certainly opens up a way for differentiated learning, as we will see later on. Strategy has, of course, to do with omnichannel engagement. That's the core of the whole survey, but of course, the whole new thing of digital technologies, health tech, etc., is high on the agenda, certainly of senior management and people in digital teams. Everybody seems to believe that there will be, let's say, a strong impact of those technologies going forward. So 58% believes it's going to be a hard effect that actually comes to the industry. 32% believes it's moderate. So that combined is close to 90% who feels there will be a significant impact. And then if you ask the second question, are you actually preparing? So do you have a strategy in place to actually make that healthcare disruption become an advantage for you? Then you see the numbers go down significantly. So only 7% of the 58% actually say that they have a strategy in place. So that shows, again, a lack of strategy in the digital technology space. If you look at another very important element in pharma, which is product launches, same thing here. People feel it's very important to have a digital component for new product launches. That's 86% who find it very important to important. If you then look at the satisfaction level, that's only 34%. So maybe here too, everybody wants to have one, but the strategy to actually make this a success is much less supported. So what is happening and what should be happening? We asked this question about digital teams. You've seen that the satisfaction level with international teams and to a lesser extent local teams is quite low. So if we were to ask our respondents what they feel those teams should be doing versus what they do today, what would be the key deltas? And this is the slide that shows the results here. So the orange one shows what they currently do. So most of them focus on campaign and content development or technology selection and implementation. If you then ask the question like what should they focus on, it's clear that it should be much less on the top component, campaign and content development. Maybe also because of one of the earlier slides in which we showed that, let's say there's only a very limited adoption of international content, etc. going on. So local affiliates might feel that they don't need this, they need something else. But what they do want more is strategy. So 23% says these teams should really focus much more on strategy, on change management, etc. So both of these things are not the hard components, but the hard with EART elements. So much more focus on these things. So we need visionary leaders, motivated and skilled staff. So these are all, let's say, hard enablers. And there, if you look at skills, consistently over time, and it's not getting much better, you see that the skill level continues to be low. So the marketing, medical, and sales, only under 10% feel that they are an expert in digital. In none of the four groups, you actually get a 50% score for sufficient and expert. And surprisingly as well, the people who should be leading the effort, digital multi-channel, only 15% feels that they actually know these things in and out and are experts in the space. So if the senior management does not feel that they have enough knowledge, some of the teams that actually are working on these things, marketing, medical, and sales, and digital, actually are not making up for that lack of knowledge. Same thing for a very detailed sub-analysis. If you're going to plan for omnichannel engagement, you need to know how to create the right mix, the right content, the right frequency, the right cadence, etc., for the right segments in the audience. You see this, the robust channel mix is actually creeping up a little bit from 5% of experts to 8%, but that is quite, let's say, quite low and is evolving quite slowly. So if the money needs to be spent and only 8% feels very comfortable with where to put it and how to get the orchestration of channels and content going, that probably also means that there's a lot of opportunity out there to improve this. So skill building is clearly important. And how is skill building done these days? How to fill the skill building gap, how to make people feel really, let's say, confident in what they're doing. Right now, the 18% do not get any formal learning opportunities. I think that's a key statement. Most of the current activities is on-the-job learning, e-learning as well. And then if you were to look at what they actually want, it still is on-the-job learning. I think that's totally a good way to go. Very few people actually do not want any formal learning opportunities. So that drops from 18 to 3. But the most interesting deltas are to be found a bit lower. So workshops and training, traditional workshops and training is seen as much more important than what they currently get. And also the personal coaching by an expert is, let's say, tripling from 5 to 15%. The conferences stays at the same level and is actually, I think, only number 5 in the opportunity. So these are ways to bring training to people. And there's a few shifts that are totally interesting, like workshops and personal coaching that should be added to that mix. If we look, let's say, beyond training and skill building, we also need, of course, a strong leadership, culture, etc. So we asked a few questions on those, and these are just a few of the questions that we asked, but I think this is an interesting one. So 52% of the respondents say that their company is not encouraging risk-taking at this moment in time. In a world where Amazon is saying fail fast, pharma companies, half of them at least, say, well, that's not a cultural option that we have. This doesn't help, of course, in, let's say, moving to a digital organization. And secondly, the leadership as well, and we've seen that in the hurdles, where people, the directors themselves, feel they're not very strong in the skills for digital. You see the same here. So are companies developing the right type of leaders who have the capabilities to lead in a digital environment? Also here, it's only, let's say, 26% who agree or strongly agree with that. So the leaders of the future are not necessarily being built en masse today in the industry. That, together with the limited risk-taking in half of the respondents, I think shows that on a cultural and leadership perspective, there's also quite a few things to be done. So not the hard technology, but the hard as the beating heart component. So this is the picture. We've seen the dichotomy happening. So we've seen, and that's actually a good news as well. So the fact that it was lower may well be partly influenced by the fact that we have new joiners in this space who are starting to spend slowly. The fact that they spend slowly is not necessarily a good thing, but the fact that we have more and more people starting to enjoy this and starting to do this is actually very good. So it's a mixed picture. But I think overall the dichotomy is there. The hard components, building technologies, doing, let's say, putting in resources is not the problem. It's more the problem of the heart. So the soft enablers, the mindset, etc. So where do we go from here? This is our approach. We think you need to look at both sides. You need to look at the hard component with the D and the hard component with the T. And if you bring those four together, you actually, or those two together, you have a really good, solid, long-term strategy. So you need to have a robust, quantified burning platform. This is often missing, I feel. People say we need to do digital because everybody is doing digital. I think that's not good enough. You need to know why, what it will bring to you, and when and why you're doing it. You need to have a solid strategy, roadmap, and vision. That is more than we need to do a website. That's not a strategy, that's a tactic. It needs to be a comprehensive strategy. It needs to look beyond year one, and it needs to have a very compelling vision. We talked extensively about enablers, so that's number 3, the coherent set of key enablers. There are 2 types, let's say the technology resource enablers, but then also organization and people and staff and capability development. The former one, the technology one, are relatively easy to implement because it's a matter of spending the money. The other ones are much more difficult. Capturing the minds of the people in the organization is much more difficult than spending money on it as well. And then finally, you should not indeed spend too much time on just doing strategy. You should also try to start going and learning as you go. So multiple shots to goal, short time to impact, first step, so minimal viable products, etc. Is agile, is really important here. So a 5-year strategy that takes 2 years to build is probably not the only solution. So that brings me to the final chart. This is something we apply very often, and it's well understandable and people recognize it immediately. It's actually Gleicher is an Austrian guy. I think over 50 years ago he produced this, and it's not about digital transformation necessarily, because those things did not exist in those days, but it's about change management. So what is needed to actually capture the minds and the hearts of people? And he said you actually need 4 elements. That's the need for change. You need to have a clear vision and goals, the capability to change and the enablers, and then the concrete first steps. So those 4 elements are actually the ones that you saw on the previous page. Only if you have all 4 ducks in a row, you will have successful change. If you do not have the burning platform, the quantified business case, and whatever in place, there will be a slow start. People do not see the need to actually move because there is no threats or no opportunity there. So they don't see the reason why they would be moving. If you do not have the second one in place, the clear vision and goals, you might have 50 different strategies running around in the organization and people doing 50 different things. So that means lack of coordination and therefore lack of impact. There is no clear direction here. If you do not have the third one in place, if you do not have the hard enablers in place, or the capability training, or the governance, or the SOPs, or all of those things, the enablers, you get frustration. So people, they see the need for change, they have a good strategy, but they cannot execute because the technology is not there, rarely, or because the people are not able to actually run with it more often, as we've seen. That leads to frustration. And then finally, if you have the first 3 ready, but you do not have a concrete execution plan, that leads to a lack of action. So people just wait until somebody picks up something and starts running. So you need to have all 4 in place. I think pharma has traditionally focused very much on number 3, mainly the hard enablers there. They've also done quite a lot in 4, but probably lacking, let's say, the coordinated piloting and selection of pilots there, so lacking the vision and the strategy. And for number 1, I believe there's much more that should be done to actually make that a burning platform. So if you have any further questions, many of you probably know me, so you can ask me or ask Sander. There's, of course, in the full deck, there's much more slides available, but this is just a quick overview. If you have any further questions, we're looking forward to your suggestions, also for extra questions for next year. So do not hesitate and reach out to Sander or myself. And that being said, I would like to thank you for your time. I hope you found this useful. You could take a few of the ideas with you and make your digital transformation stand out from the crowd, and that you do actually do strategies before the tactic, as you can see on the chart here. So thank you very much, and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.